Choma is on the line with us, the reporter with Mother Jones, the great newsletter, motherjones.com. Russ, R-U-S-S-C-H-O-M-S, C-H-O-M-A, on Twitter, or Xer, or whatever you call it. Russ, welcome back. So what's going on in the courtroom today?
Well, today, because it's voting day in New York, the court has taken a break, but we did have, since I last talked to you, we did have all of yesterday afternoon, which ended up having quite a few developments of own, because I think yesterday when we talked, it was the midday break. And so we had talked about Trump having a little bit of an outburst at the judge, and the afternoon, and I think I was telling you that the Letitia James' attorneys were not unhappy with some of his outbursts, some of his rambles, because he was throwing a lot of things in there. And in the afternoon, the judge sort of took a step back, and he told James' office, I'm going to let you take the lead on what you want to complain about when the witness doesn't answer the question. There were a few times he did interject, and he said, this is getting repetitive, you're not answering the question. But for the most part, he let James' office decide if they want to complain, and they didn't want to complain. And so in the afternoon, he rambled a lot more. He had a couple more sort of little meltdowns where he lashed out, and he declared everyone else to be a fraud, and he said it was outrageous. It was outrageous that someone would judge someone who had been such a great president, on and on and on. And in the course of all that, he also made a number of admissions as he sort of rambled. And so there are a couple times where James's office said, you know what, we're not going to ask for that to be struck from the record, because there are actually some things in there that we'd like to hear. So that was sort of the way that went for the rest of the day. It was more the same. By the end of it, he looked tired, and I don't know if he was aware that he had maybe admitted to more than he might have wanted to. I don't know if that was maybe that was all part of his strategy, but he was going to do it in the way he wanted to do it. But he looked tired, and he was done, and his team decided not to cross-examine him. Now, it's civil trial. They can bring him back, so there's a possibility they might bring him back later. When they're presenting their case. But James' office has one more witness, which will start first thing tomorrow morning, and that's Ivanka. And she's supposed to go all day today, and then James will be done with her case. And then next week, Trump's team will start their defense, which will be interesting because to this point, they haven't offered a lot of defense. They've offered a lot of political arguments. They haven't offered a lot of sort of legal defense. Right.
Yeah. Russ, there's a theory that I've heard batted around, and I've heard commentators on both pro and con this theory, that one of the part of the strategy that Trump and his lawyers were employing was trying to basically rattle or piss off Judge Engoron to the point that he would basically commit an error, that he would do something reactively that could then provide them with the basis for an appeal to get the case thrown out or reversed. What are your thoughts on that theory, and did you see any evidence to support or dispute it in yesterday's testimony?
I think it may not be a bad theory. I mean, I think they're the only ones who sort of know exactly what they're doing. There certainly seem intent on creating a lot of chaos. And so whether or not they're just trying to make things so chaotic that it's hard for anyone to make a judgment, or whether they're trying to force an error, they definitely have gotten to the judge. He's someone who has always come across as very sort of even-keeled. He sort of has a goofy sense of humor. He makes a lot of sort of dumb jokes, and he's always seemed to try very hard to be friendly to everyone and to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. In the sort of the multi-year run-up to this, there were a lot of times where, like I said, the Trump team hasn't presented a lot of technical legal defenses to things. Something would happen and they would file something that basically said, this is a political witch hunt. And he would say, yes, but what is your legal argument here? That's not a legal argument. And so he would give them lots and lots and lots of chances. Right. And he seems fed up with that. Yesterday he came out ready to argue. He looked angry the whole time. But I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, some of the lawyers that I've heard from, there's a difference between an angry judge and a judge who's not doing his job properly. And he seems to be very methodical about what he's doing. And even when he gets angry, he seems to be aware. And I mean, he appears to be a pretty smart guy. I mean, I think he's certainly aware that he has to be careful. But again, there's a difference between a judge who's angry and a judge who is not buying your case. Or buying your case, and someone who's like out of control and not doing their job. So, I mean, he may be delivering a lot of answers that Trump's team doesn't like, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's making an error. They've said that they are going to file for a mistrial. There's been a lot of controversy about his clerk. His clerk sits next to him, which I've covered a lot of court cases over the years. I've definitely seen that before. They insist that they've never seen such a thing. I've definitely seen where a clerk sits directly next to him. And just the sort of the layout of the courtroom, that's kind of where she has to sit. He's got two clerks. One sits a little bit lower and one sits right next to him. And he consults with her and she consults with him and she'll say things to him and she'll pass notes up to sometimes. And that has really, really irritated the Trump defense team. And she's the woman that Trump went after on Truth Social and posted her Instagram and falsely suggested that she was Chuck Schumer's girlfriend. And the reason that the judge has put out a gag order is to say, I want you to stop attacking her. She's been getting, I think a lot of course, people associated with the case have been getting frightening threats, that sort of thing. And they are very, very fixated on her. And they basically let it be known yesterday that they are going to ask for a mistrial. And I think they were sort of dancing around it because they have this gag order, which they're not supposed to talk about her, or they're not supposed to talk about her communications with the judge. But I think that they're going to say that she's influencing him for partisan reasons, or they're not getting a fair hearing.
What do we know about her? Who is she? What's her background?
Well, we don't know. I mean, a ton about her. I mean, but she's a judge's clerk, and I mean that the clerk's job is to. I mean. And every judge is different. Depends on how much help they want. Some treat their clerks as someone who just helps them write things, and some of them look to them for substantial legal advice. And Engoron clearly looks to her for advice, but he also makes a lot of decisions himself. He makes a lot of decisions where he doesn't seem to consult with her at all. And so I don't think it's extraordinary, and I think that they're making an accusation, but that. If you see someone sitting next to the judge talking to them, you might say, what's going on there? But I think also if you've observed a number of court cases or you know much about the way the court system works, judges consult with their clerks. And it might be a slightly unusual arrangement the way she sits or maybe how often. But I think that maybe is much part of their strategy. And you're asking, maybe they're trying to highlight that relationship there as much, and maybe make him make an error there, and maybe make him say something about her that could lead to a problem. I mean, ultimately, I think he's not going to declare a mistrial because of an accusation against him, but it gives them something to take to an appeals court. Yeah,
we're talking with Russ Choma, the investigative reporter with the Washington Bureau of Mother Jones, generally covering money and politics and influence. Russ, we have a little less than a minute to a hard break here. What do you expect tomorrow when Ivanka shows up?
I think it'll be interesting. I mean, she's the one that hasn't testified. She's resisted trying to testify, and she has been separated from the case. And the argument was that she no longer participates in the Trump organization, anything like her brothers do. She's sort of gone her own way in terms of her business. And so I don't think there'll be any shocks, but it'll be interesting to see her articulate her the relationship has changed and how she's maybe not as close as she used to be. I think that could be one of the most interesting things.
Yeah, she and her husband are now independently wealthy times, exponential, with billions of dollars from Saudi Arabia and whatnot. And she was trying to get out of this by saying it's a school day. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a school day for a lot of people who are at court.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to fly. Russ Choma, the investigative reporter with the Washington Bureau of Mother Jones. Russ, thanks so much for dropping by today.
No problem.
Looking forward to our communication tomorrow. That's going to be an interesting one. Thanks again, Russ. We'll be back. Oh, Russ already hung up. We'll be back on the other side of this break. The new enemies of Argentina's far right. Swifties? Really? I'll tell you about that. And some interesting new science. Stay tuned.